Hello, hello. Let's see. Yay, hello, you guys are joining. Awesome, hello. Okay, let me tag in the comments here. My name's Cassandra and I'm a sustainable stylist. Let me get this tagged in here quick while you guys load in. Hello, hello. Trying to get this tagged in the comments. Hello. Okay, let's see if we can get this posted. Hi, Megan. Let's get this pinned. Okay, getting this pinned. Good morning. If you are on the West Coast like me, I'm in Los Angeles. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to my session with Create and Cultivate. My name is Cassandra Dittmer and I am a sustainable stylist. And today my main goal is to share some tips and tricks on how to build a network of like-minded clients in the fashion industry. And okay, let's see. People are still loading in. Want to make sure everything is good to go. Okay, we're already getting some questions. I guess since I'm a stylist, I will start off by saying, or a couple of people have been asking about this top. This top is from a New Zealand brand called Maggie Marilyn. Okay, so for those of you who don't know who I am, which is probably most of you, I am a wardrobe stylist and brand consultant based out of Los Angeles. I've been in various roles in the industry. You know, if I include internships, it's been about 10 years. And most of my experience is in the, like the red carpet in the styling space. I started off assisting about 8 years ago, assisted a stylist for about 5 years. And 3 years ago, I started my own company, my own styling company. My Instagram handle is @Cassandra. I pinned it in there for you guys. And again, just kind of reiterating, my goal is to help provide you guys some tips and tricks on how to cultivate a network of like-minded clients and brands, specifically in the styling and fashion space. And, so I know from my personal experience that the industry can feel super lonely and hard to navigate. I have felt like that often, and I have struggled with feeling like an outsider and building a community, whether it's clients, colleagues, brands that I want to work with, that have felt like they really championed and displayed my values. And so I want to this is my first time sharing the screen in this way. I'm going to start to show you guys some of my tips. Okay, let's see if this works. Fun! Oh my gosh, I love this. This is the first time that I have this type of artwork in a live. It's so fun. Okay, my first tip that I wanted to share with you guys is to take a stance. And when I say that, I just mean it's important in, I think, any industry, but definitely in the fashion industry, to have an opinion and own it. And that could be anything, from especially in creative industries and fashion, you can sort of get lost if you don't have a strong stance and focus on becoming an expert. So, when I started my own company, I decided that I wanted my focus to be on sustainability. And my definition of sustainability is always evolving, but I've kind of narrowed it down to sustainability to me is working with brands that focus on 3 E's. So that's how do we make the economics and the environment all make sense when working with a client. So, we're trying to, how do we consider the economics and the environment and make it equitable when working on a job. So for example, I'm working on a job in London right now where I'm costuming a film from afar. And in this job, we're focusing on a couple different values. We want all of the brands to be sustainable. We want them to be, British or try to source locally. And we're trying to work with mostly female designers because it's a mostly female cast. So, when working with clients, I have decided that my inception starts with values. And so that's, a stance that I have taken, and I really focus on becoming an expert and staying an expert in these brands and their values. And that kind of leads me into talking about cultivating integrity, which was my next tip. And I have found more success and fulfillment in the industry when I center my work around my values and cultivate integrity in the space. And that's kind of how I got started doing sustainable styling. I know that's a bit, I would love to also demystify what that means to be a sustainable stylist. And, really to me, it does kind of go back to considering equity and and that can be from clients, that can be from brands. And I kind of hold everyone to that level of transparency. And I have found that, of course, it is harder to, it's harder to cultivate integrity. Sometimes that means maybe saying no to jobs that aren't aligned with your values, or maybe, having to say no to a client or a friend. But that also really can establish you as this expert. And then you're spending your time focusing on jobs, working with brands, working with clients that are aligned with your values. And, hold on. Oh, sorry, I was gonna answer a question. And so how I have kind of pivoted that into my business is on my website, I do tiered services. So in my next tip, I said, be explicit about how to be hired. And when I went on my own and started my own company, that was the hardest part for me, was figuring out how to be hired. And I know initially as a freelancer or in the fashion industry, you might just kind of take jobs here and there to make money and take jobs here and there just to kind of find your footing, which is great. You want as much work experience as you can, but you do also need to tell people how to hire you. So, sometimes just saying I'm a stylist or I'm a creative or, I'm a fashion person in a super saturated industry, you might not be hired the way that you want to be, on your website or on where people can book you. You need to be able to quickly convey, your values. And yes, you want beautiful images and, you want to create a vibe out there and kind of create this balance. But I have found that saying, I'm a sustainable stylist, these are my values, here's how you can hire me, kind of demystifies some of that process. And, I do that a lot on my website, and it's how I've kind of transitioned a lot of my clients, especially during COVID and, during the pandemic, transitioning clients from being in person to online. And so that's just kind of another way of if we aren't in person together explaining how to be hired can be even harder. And, throughout this time, I have, again, transitioned a lot of my clients to e-styling. And in that process, I've really had to be explicit about how to be hired. So that means taking clients through a questionnaire and through, there's tiered services. It could be everything from sourcing an item to full styling for an event to cleaning out closets and kind of a mix of everything in between. And people only, I found much more success in this when I really was explicit about the services and explained to people clearly the deliverables. I think sometimes styling, you get confused on exactly how to hire people. And so next, I'm going to share a couple more tips. Okay, so I have found that you need to find a way to visually communicate your values. So when I say this, I really just mean walk the talk. If you want to have a business that's in fashion and it's centered around your values, your platform needs to communicate that. So the brands you're posting and, putting, whether it's brands you're working with, clients you're working with, they need to convey your values. So if you say you are a sustainable stylist and then all of the brands that you're working with are not sustainable and aren't particularly ethical, then that's going to confuse clients, that's going to confuse brands on how to work with you. And if you really want to have a business that's centered around that platform, those brands need to exemplify your values. And eventually, like-minded clients will start to come to you once you've kind of drawn that line in the sand of this is how to hire me. And, you've created some boundaries with your clients. And, with clients, with brands, once you just kind of explain that this is how to hire me and this is how to convey it visually, I think you have to be really careful about whether it's on your Instagram, on your website, be reposting and working with these values visually. It's so important as a stylist and as someone who we communicate visually. What we do is wear clothing and we help clients also wear clothing. And so today, of course I'm wearing Maggie Maryland, which is a sustainable brand, and you want, that all needs to be consistent into what you are displaying visually. And so that kind of leads me into my next tip as well. So don't wait, be your own mentor is recent advice that I think I read from Sophia Amoruso, the original Boss Babe. And it really, really resonated with me because in the fashion industry, I have found myself often, at a crossroads or a bit stuck in the industry and wishing I had a mentor. And, I think it's an easy thing to say, I don't have my dream job, or I haven't gotten, where I want to go yet because someone hasn't led me there. And I think that once you kind of switch your mindset and rewire your brain to actually realize that, you need to take yourself there. So you need to rewrite how you work with brands, rewrite, how you want to build your own business, and kind of realize that, not everyone is always going to have this mentor that carves this really specific path for them. You really need to be proactive. Every day for clients, I'm reaching out for, new clients, new brands. I'm still cold emailing and DMing brands, all of the time to work with them, to try to understand them, and, really kind of like being your own mentor, being your own leader, especially when you're, self-employed. So you might not have a boss, you might not have someone who is, directly guiding you, and there might not be someone who's invested in your growth. So you have to invest in your growth. You need to be a leader in that space. And, of course, I hope people have mentors, and that's, it's amazing for everyone who does. I think I have, again, just personally found myself stuck in that way. And once you kind of rewire your brain to just realize that, you can cultivate this community. I know when I took this stance on becoming a sustainable stylist, that was hard because some brands that I used to work with, maybe, I couldn't work with as much. And, it got really tough in that space. But taking the stance, establishing that you don't want to wait, you need to just be your own mentor. It eventually is, it's worth it. And also just asking, I think my next tip in there, what I said too, is just ask more questions. So, I started differentiating myself as a stylist as a sustainable stylist, because I was asking so many questions, questions about the industry, questions on clothing, why things are made where they are. I try to equate it to I think about food in the sense of like, okay, I wouldn't, eat food with these chemicals on it. Why would I wear them? Or how can something, how is this equitable for people? Like, why can this be so cheap? This doesn't make sense. Or, taking on a ton of, unpaid work, or brands that maybe there's just not a lot of information on their brand, and, asking questions. Because a lot of times these small brands are innately sustainable, but they might not market themselves that way. And so I think, being a stylist in 2020 and having this platform and also doing this for clients, it's important to ask questions, to establish yourself as this expert and really dig into what is behind the brand, because ultimately, how they treat their employees and, all of the economics that go into their supply chain, that's equally, if not more important. Of course, as a stylist, you never want to compromise aesthetics, but the equity has to be there in the whole supply chain, or there's just so many brands doing it well that are just deserving of a platform. And so it's just really important to keep asking these questions. And and a lot of these questions obviously are still unanswered, but asking them will differentiate yourself. And again, being a stylist in 2020 really means helping clients navigate the space, and not just being a shopping buddy. We have so much access to information now, that we really do need to be asking questions and becoming a resource for clients. And kind of on this becoming a resource space, I think it's very important to curate who you follow, who you're sharing, and have it exemplify your values. You really should be shopping, building your wardrobe, building clients according to your values. So, that might be, so for me, of course, it's sustainability, it's ethics, it's championing everyone. I always try to find people and brands that are left out or deserving of this platform, and how can we, find a way to work together. And, when you curate who you follow, it's who you follow, who you share, who you work with, and start to really have it exemplify your values. I think that's when you're really going to notice a huge difference. And, all of a sudden it will start to click. And kind of, yeah. So my second tip in there was to strive to become a resource. And I really do, I think now a lot of the brands that I love following, like Maggie Marilyn does this well, they are radically transparent. They are sharing what's in their supply chain. They are, sharing podcasts. They are sharing books. They are, really establishing themselves as a resource. I tagged a couple, which I can share later for you guys as well, but I had tagged a couple of my favorite resources. One is the Sustainable Fashion, or the New Fashion Initiative, the Sustainable Fashion Forum. Those are two brands and two Instagram accounts that I love to follow. And this is kind of exactly how my e-styling process works as well, is I always end with resources. And so whether, tips for you guys, tips for clients, I always try to bring it back to like, these are the resources. This is what is the actual pulse of the industry. Like the New Fashion Initiative, Sustainable Fashion Forum, they both always have a pulse on the industry. New Fashion Initiative really helps showcase like policy. And I always try to, that's something I'm trying to learn is, kind of digging into fashion from a policy perspective and how to contribute in that way. And that's really what I want to leave clients with. And another brand that I had tagged in here is Public Habit, who is a brand I've recently started working with this year. And, on their website, they clearly communicate their entire supply chain. So that's everything from meeting the people who make the materials, explaining the materials, and coming at it from what I would consider like a vulnerable standpoint. So they say, this is why wool is good. This is why wool is bad. This is what's good about cashmere. This is what isn't the best about cashmere. And I think when brands can bring themselves in a way that's very vulnerable, of like, this is what we're doing well and this is what we want to do better, I always really appreciate that, because this kind of ties back to being this not as inclusive industry where like, just because a brand isn't doing everything right, that all of a sudden, they are shunned or they aren't sustainable from the industry. And I just don't believe that is how you build community. I think building community in fashion and in styling and in design is showing what you're doing and being radically transparent. I think as, clients and consumers, we need to continue to demand this transparency. And, that's how you grow brands that are saying, like Public Habit, like many other brands, that are saying, this is what we're doing well. This is where we want to improve. This is why this is made here. And I think there has to be some some sense of like this, if we're creating something, we are adding to the industry. So innately, if we are designing something, creating something, that does have a level of waste for sure. And knowing if we're adding to the world right now, if we're adding to this space, we need to be able to, be accountable and have reasons and actually have a reason for why we are creating newness right now, because newness isn't necessarily exactly what we need. And I think, getting access to these resources and understanding why brands do what they do, that's something that I always am asking myself, why? Why is this being made here? Why is this, why is it being manufactured here? Why are we using these materials? Why is the pricing like this? What makes something cheaper or what makes something more expensive? And when you're really able to kind of unpack that why, I think that's so valuable. And okay, yeah, so I do have those tagged there. And one of the last things that I also wanted to leave you guys with is, okay, here. I also hadn't even used this main screen. Someone had asked earlier about managing resources, and I think it's really important to, I want to call out a website that we use, again, leaving you with more resources, is monday.com. So that is how my team manages all of our resources. So this is kind of part content calendar management, part website management, and part of managing resources. And, I think, and it also has an address book. So I know that sounds a bit simple, but the address book feature on Monday is amazing. And I know in my team, we've basically been trying to figure out, how do we almost have our own search engine? If we want to search ethical designer from New Zealand, how is that possible? And so the functions of the address book feature in Monday are amazing, or we call it an address book, but it has the optionality to create something like that. And I think as simple as it is, when you are a small business, staying organized in that way of, how are your resources, how are your clients? I think monday.com is definitely one of my favorite resources, just from like a business perspective. And we only have a couple more minutes, but let me see if I can get to a couple questions. How would we suggest go about starting? Thank you from New Zealand. So this is a question, I get often from students, people looking for a career change. Something that I love trying to do is demystify the styling world, because it does seem a bit, elusive. How do you get started? And I do still, I really still think the best way is to just start. I know that sounds simple, cold email, DM stylist, try to just start somewhere. And I think you'll be surprised how responsive a lot of stylists will be to interns, and kind of just know that even if it's part-time, you will probably be kind of starting from the bottom. But again, I have been in the industry for 10 years. I am still cold emailing brands and clients, all the time, trying to cultivate this community. And I think, starting somewhere is the easiest thing to do, in the sense, well, it's not easy at all to just start, but just to slowly start to chip away. And now, when I started, Instagram wasn't a thing. And, we have much more, you're able to convey your, opinions and aesthetic visually. And I think really paying attention to continuing to do that, you can build an Instagram for free. There's a lot of things for free online that you can start to cultivate that community. And, I want everyone to start. And I really do think, I was looking through a couple more questions, but, that just trying to start somewhere, and reaching out to brands. I know, again, that does sound a bit simple, but please, reach out to brands, reach out to people, and just try to start somewhere. And I think we are running out of a bit of time, but this was very, very fun. If there's any last minute question come through, I can try to answer it. But also feel free to, continue this conversation, throw your questions in the DMs, and we will try to get to it. Okay, there's one more that just popped through. Any advice for changing careers? And any advice for changing careers? And I really, if I had to whittle it down, I would say that it kind of goes back to this just starting, where, you should probably expect to kind of be, doubling up, start something as a side hustle, and, don't be afraid to start something as a side hustle, and then hopefully make it your full-time hustle at some point. But yeah, and again, this kind of does all tie in, because changing careers, cultivating that community, have a specific vision. I think the industry gets very saturated, and just saying I want to be a stylist or I want to be in fashion, I think you can feel a bit lost. And so, find, if you kind of come with these values, or come with, this is my niche in the industry, I think it's a little bit easier to establish yourself. But we did run out of time, and just making sure I close out of this. So again, my Instagram is @Cassandra. And so feel free to DM me, feel free to DM the Create and Cultivate account. My email is on my page. I'm pretty good about answering emails as well. It's CD, my initials, @CassandraDittmer.com. So you can feel free to email me questions as well. And yeah, okay, that's it, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a good rest of your Monday.